through a few housekeeping things. We have quite a few attendees joining today, so we'll use the chat box in your bottom right-hand corner to ask questions, make comments, and chat to other attendees. If you are asking a question, could I ask you to use the question mark? Then we'll be able to identify the questions, and Jair will be able to answer them at the end in the discussion section. Also, if you are having any IT issues, we have a colleague, Kelly, who's available. So please also just ask any questions in the chat box with IT issues. And we've got the recording has started now. Thanks. So welcome. We're very lucky to have Jair Torres join us today to present on school safety. Apologies, my microphone just went. I would love to introduce Jair. I was reading his bio the other day and was very excited and felt like we were very lucky to have Jair with us. So Jair is an international consultant on disaster risk reduction and resilience. He is a PhD candidate on risk and emergency management at the Understanding and Managing Extremes Graduate School of the University School for Advanced Studies, IUSS, in Pavia, Italy. Mr. Torres has worked in the International Hydrological Program, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, and the Unit for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience of UNESCO, on the international activities related to the scientific, educational, and policy aspects of natural hazards leading to disaster. He has been involved in activities concerning school safety, early warning systems, and promotion of scientific cooperation and capacity building for disaster reduction. Among others, he has been responsible for the International Platform for Earthquake Early Warning Systems and UNESCO's VISAS methodology for assessing school facilities and the UNESCO program for measuring resilience. He's been playing an active role in the design and implementation of the International Platform for Reducing Earthquake Disasters, the Program for Reducing Earthquake Losses, and the International Network for Multi-Hazard Early Warning Systems. For the last 2 years, he has been chairing the Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the Education Sector, GADRRRES, and Mr. Torres is the chief editor of a special edition on school safety in the International Journal for Disaster Risk Reduction, which will be launched in 2020. Jair, it's an absolute pleasure to have you join us, and I will hand over to you.
Oh, thank you, Kate, and welcome to everybody. For us, it's really a pleasure to be here and to have all this audience, more than 30 participants that will be listen about the school safety in the context of disaster risk reduction, about the work of GADRRRES worldwide. So really, it's a pleasure for me to be here. And I'm going to start now. What I will do is I'm going to put down the camera like that for connection issues. For some of you, maybe it's going to be easier. So I'm going to turn off the camera. Still, there is nothing very interesting to see myself on the camera. So I'm just going to go to the presentation. If you have questions, as Kate has explained, please put it on the chat with the question mark. And then at the end of the presentation, we will try to solve all of your questions. So welcome to everybody. So today we're going to be talking about the school safety in the context of disaster risk reduction. This is an activity that has been developed in the framework of the safest of our initiative for safe schools, and it's part of the activities of the Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the Education Sector. So a little bit an overview about how we're gonna introduce the subject today. So first, the introduction to the webinar, which has been done by Kate. Then we're going to talk a little bit on the global agenda. So why school safety is important and what are the different commitments that has been signed by different governments worldwide. What is GADRRRES? So a little bit an introduction about what is this group about it, who composed this group, and what are our intentions and objectives. Then what is the comprehensive school safety framework? That this is a little bit like the technical document that, frame our interventions and actions when we are talking about the school safety. We're going to provide you with some examples of comprehensive school safety framework activities. And at the end, we're going to give you some ideas about how you can get involved and about some key message that we would like to leave here for all of you. So when we talk about school safety, we need to do some clarifications sometimes, because if you go in Google and you type school safety, you're going to get a lot of hints that are more related to school violence and bullying. And for this, there is already many organizations that has been working, for instance, UNICEF, UNESCO, Save the Children, that has been working on how to manage and avoid bullying in the schools and how to diminish violence in the schools. For instance, if you see in internet, more of the first hits that you will get in Google are related to shootings in the United States. So you see like, oh, wow, this is very dangerous here. But this is not the topic that we will discuss today. There are some elements that can be applied to this kind of issues, but this is not related about the work that we will do today. The second is when we are talking about conflict. So, like how schools are being used in some context to protect militaries or to protect guerrilleros or to protect some kind of conflict actors within that. And for that, there is already the Global Coalition to Protect Education from Attack. That is a similar group like GADRRRES group, but that particular tackle and work on issues related to how to protect schools in order not to be used in the conflict or to be in the middle of the conflict. For this, there are some declarations. The most important one is the Buenos Aires Declaration, on which many governments has committed themselves to avoid involving the school communities in their conflict. And then we are talking about the other agenda that is more related to hazards, more related to the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, but as well as the climate change, the new urban agenda, and the sustainable development goals, that is talking more about hazards, about anthropogenic hazards, but also about natural hazards. And this is where we're going to be discussing today. As I say before, there are many elements of the comprehensive school safety framework that can be applied to school violence and bullying, but also to conflict-related issues. But our work will focus at this moment on what we will talk about: anthropogenic hazards and natural hazards. And this is more or less the work of GADRRRES nowadays. So, as you can see in this slide, we have more than 2.3 billion children living through the world, but most of them, we have been making estimations that there are more than 75 million children that are attending schools where we cannot really provide a safe environment for them. And they are very, very impacted for hazards. So as you can see, this is an image that we developed lately, but for sure this image is increasing because the impacts of hazards on schools are becoming more and more regular, notably due to different hazards related, for instance, to air-related hazards, so geohazards, such as earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis, related to wind, so tornadoes, hurricanes, related to floods, and even the inundations that come with the tsunami, or related to fire, a lot of fires in many schools. Also, another issue that we would like to add here is concerning ordinary use. Many schools nowadays are collapsing due to a lack of maintenance. And we have seen examples in countries such as South Africa, Nigeria, where a school has been collapsing and kids has been dying due to a lack of maintenance or a corruption, but application of some materials or some issues related to the construction of the schools that are not related for a specific natural hazard, but more related to anthropogenic hazards. So you see, it's a big issue. It's something that we need to tackle, and this is why we are here and we are trying to promote this specific subject. So what is the global agenda on which school safety is embedded, and what are the commitments that has been done worldwide for this? So in the global agenda, if we check the Sustainable Development Goals, we are talking about the need to provide children and youth with a nurturing environment for the full realization of their rights and capabilities, helping our countries to reap the demographic dividend, including through safe schools and cohesive communities and families. And then you have two specific Sustainable Development Goals that are talking about safe school. We are talking about target or goal number 4 on quality educations, where we request to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And we have a very specific target that is for A, when we are talking specific to one of the issues of the comprehensive school safety, that is infrastructure. And we say, like, build and upgrade educational facilities that are child, disability, and gender sensitive and provide safe, non-violent, inclusive, and effective learning environments for all. But also, it is embedded within the Sustainable Cities and Communities goal, because most of the schools nowadays, more than 60% of the schools are located in urban contexts. So this global agenda has been one of the commitments for many governments, and school safety is part of this agenda. Similar, on the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, on the 4 priorities, we are talking about the need to reduce the potential impact of natural anthropogenic hazards on critical facilities. And when we are talking about critical facilities, normally we are talking about hospitals and schools. But one interesting issue here is that in the targets and indicators that has been developed for the Sendai framework, we are also talking about the disruption that the school service is having due to any kind of hazard. So how many days schools are out of use due to a specific hazard. So here we are involving not only which is related to the infrastructure, but also about the planning, about the management of schools, about the education that is below these kind of things. And these are one of the targets that has been embedded normally on target D of the Sendai framework and the different indicators for this. So countries are reporting on these specific issues in the framework of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Sorry for the framework twice. Then, as well, in the Paris Climate Agreement, we have seen school safety embedded in different articles, notably in Article 7, 8, and 11, on which one we ask to check what is the situation about the schools in order not only to see the impacts of climate change on them, but also how through education and through management we can tackle climate change in a better sense. So as you can see in the major framework agendas, school safety has been embedded and is one of the issues that is becoming more and more important in the whole development and humanitarian agenda. And this is why the Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the Education Sector, which is a very long name and has a very awful acronym, GADRRRES, but it's a very important group that is working on trying to promote school safety on those agenda and support governments and support communities in bringing school safety issues in order to make that the school environment is good for all of our kids. So a little bit of history about the creation of GADRRRES. So GADRRRES was created following the World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction that was held in 2005 in Japan, in Hyogo. And in that conference, a cluster was established to promote knowledge and education for DRR. This goes in parallel with the decade on education for sustainable development. One of the ideas is that there will not be sustainable development if there is not disaster risk reduction. So we need to start checking how education and school safety will help us to really reach sustainable development goals. And at that time was the Millennium Development Goals. So in 2006, the cluster was formalized into what we call a thematic platform knowledge and education of what was previously UNSDR. So they have different thematic platforms that were talking about the specific issues. For instance, we have the TPK on knowledge and education, but also we have another platform on environment. So how environment and ecosystem-based solutions are providing many opportunities for disaster risk reduction. So these thematic platforms helps to try to promote the subjects within that DRR agenda. In 2006, this TPKA was created by relevant UN bodies, international NGOs, selection regional partners, etc., etc. And in 2007, we had for the first time a request for member states after the first global platform that followed the Hyogo framework, the Hyogo conference in 2005, and member states request the TPKA to provide it with methodologies that allow them to assess school safety. I'm going to go back to that later on, but it is very important because that was one of the first jobs that were given to this platform, to this group, that later on in 2013 changed from TPKA to GADRRRES in order to promote the subject in the new 2015 agenda that was about to start. So the members of GADRRRES are those that you see. So we have more than 14 general members that has a regional and international mandate. Of course, UNICEF, UNESCO, UNDRR, Save the Children, the UNESCO International Institute for Planning in the Education Sector, the International Federation of Red Crosses, and their national subsidiaries, INI, that is the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies, Plan International, the RED, GFDRR, so the World Bank through the Global Facilities for Disaster Reduction and Recovery, RIS-RED, Israel, and also from the private sector, Arup International. Also World Vision, sorry. So these are the general members of GADRRRES that are working worldwide in order to promote our agenda and the comprehensive school safety framework, which I'm going to explain later. Also, we have regional affiliates, and I will go back to these regional affiliates. So we have the Asia Pacific Coalition for School Safety and the Latin American Group for DRR Management in the Education Sector. So, okay, so what is the comprehensive school safety framework? So as I was saying, in 2007, members of the member states of the UN request this thematic platform to provide a methodology to assess school safety. And it was a very interesting exercise because all the people that I show you that were there as members of GADRRRES were sitting around the table, and we invite also other organizations like FAO, like the Food and Agriculture Organization, UNDP, etc., to try to organize ourselves about how we're going to produce this methodology that has been requested by member states. Nevertheless, we realized that even within partners and practitioners on education and practitioners on DRR, we had a different conception about what school safety means. And this is something that goes again to my first slide about when you go on in searching Google, or when you request somebody what is school safety, everybody will have a different opinion about what is school safety. So, for instance, the colleagues from FAO, I remember very well in that meeting, were mentioning that the school safety is about nutrition. They say, look at, if our kids doesn't have good stomachs, the stomach full, and if they don't have the energy to run in the case of evacuation, you don't have a school safety. Well, it's a good point. My colleagues from UNESCO in the education sector were mentioned, yeah, but that is not about this. It's also about curricula and about cognitive and not cognitive education. Oh, yeah, it's true as well. Colleagues from the international NGOs like Save the Children or Plan International say, yeah, but school safety is more about management, about how you interact with communities and how we prepare at the school level the kids. Yeah, it's true as well. And colleagues from the science sector and colleagues from the World Bank, they were talking, yeah, but it's more about, the building is more about the infrastructure. So we realized that we didn't have a common understanding about what school safety is. And if you don't have a common understanding about what school safety is, it's very difficult to try to provide a methodology that will assess your state of school safety. So this is how, with the leadership of Save the Children, we develop what we call the comprehensive school safety framework. And the comprehensive school safety framework is what you see in a very brief scheme on your screens now. So it's a holistic approach that includes three main pillars, and that has a very important interaction between those pillars in the center, but that is involved for very important sector policies and plans. So what are those pillars? The first pillars is what we call the safe learning facilities. So is what we are talking is the science behind school safety. Is all that is related to safe site selection, to building codes, to performance standards, to disaster resilience design, to builder training, to construction supervision, to quality control, remodeling, retrofitting, etc. So it's everything that is let's say, the hard part of the comprehensive school safety. Then we have a school disaster management that is more about, how we manage disaster resolution at the school level. So we are talking about building maintenance, about non-structural mitigation, fire safety that are combined with the first pillar, but also about assessment and planning, physical and environmental protection, response skills and provisions, representation and participatory approach involving communities and the schools, education continuity plans, standard operation procedures, contingency planning, school drinks, family reunification plan, household disaster plan, etc., etc. So it's everything that is related about how we manage school safety at the school level and how we involve communities and how we make that the schools know how to act and react in the case of a specific hazard. And the third pillar is about risk reduction and resilience education. So here is about how we create the cognitive and not cognitive elements in order that our kids understand what are the drivers that make a hazard to become a disaster. So we are talking here about formal curriculum integration infusion, about teacher training, which is very important, and staff development, consensus-based measures so that we understand the same, extracurricular and community-based informal education. And we are talking about cognitive, we are talking about how, for instance, through the normal curricular, we can make and create this understanding, as I have previously mentioned, about that what is the hazard, how volcanoes or landslides are produced, and how these hazards can become or can trigger disasters if we are not organized as good. This is why, for instance, within this pillar is where we came with to promoting this to stop using the natural disaster misconception, because disasters are not natural. What are natural are the hazards. Disasters are social constructions. So we need to understand that, and we need to promote those in our kids, but also non-formal education to go to the life learning to communities, to people that doesn't go on formal education, etc. But these three pillars that needs to work together cannot be anything if they are not involved and embedded on the education sector policies and plans. So if the education sector doesn't include policies that tackle the three pillars in a holistic manner, we can say that we don't have a school safety. And this is very important because many governments, they believe sometimes that the school safety is only the pillar three. No, I have been already working on the formal curricula, and in our country it's okay. So yeah, but how is your school disaster management at the school level? Do they have reunification plans? Do they have contingency plans? Or they say, no, we have a very good infrastructure. Yeah, you can have good infrastructure, but if they don't know what a hazard is or about how to manage within inside the school specific hazards, is not enough. So these pillars has to be embedded on the education sector policy and plans, but also they have to be aligned to the national, subnational, and local disaster management plans that normally are those plans that are related to the National Disaster Management Office or agency, depending in each country, and that are embedded also on the development plan of the country. Why I say that? Because sometimes, and we have seen that cases, there are some directives that come from the Minister of Education that are contrary to the directive that are promoted by the emergency agency or the national emergency agency. So, for instance, in Italy, we have the case that the national disaster management agencies request that schools will be locked and closed with the lock for avoiding the Minister of Education requests that the schools will be locked in order to avoid that external people to the schools will be entering in the schools. But the NDMO requests that the schools will be unlocked in order that there is an emergency, kids can evacuate to different areas. So you see, there are two directives that are coming to the education sector, one that is have been done by the Minister of Education and another one that was done by the NDMO that are contradictory. So this is why the education sector policies and plans has to be aligned to the NDMO strategies and plans. So what does it tell us? That we need a lot of coordination between institutions in order to implement school safety issues. So this is more or less a brief summary about what the comprehensive school safety framework is. Of course, you can have more information about what it is in the GADRRRES website, but I wanted to try to give you the idea about what is the CSF. So what are the goals of the CSF? So there are many goals, but we can resume these goals on four main of them. So the first one is to protect learners and education workers from death, injury, and harm in school. So we need to protect our kids, and we need not only to protect the kids, but also the teachers and also the administrative staff that are on the schools, that are every day coming to the schools, and through them the community. It's a good way to promote a culture of disaster risk reduction through schools to the community. The second is to plan for educational continuity in the face of all expected hazards and threats. So as you know, the right to education is one of the most important rights on the whole rights scale. And we need to be sure that even if we have been impacted by a hazard, that right has to go back as soon as possible in order that our kids can have all the elements to have a life and to be in the society. So educational continuity is very important. So we need to plan for that. Third, is very important is to safeguard education sector investments. As many of you know, resources are very limited. And the ministers of education has very limited resources. So when you plan and you do investments on your schools, you need to be sure that those investments are going to stay for long, are going to last for long. So that is very important. It's another objective that we would like to have here. And I was mentioned before, another goal is to strengthen risk reduction and resilience through education. So how we can use education to send the message of resilience and DRR not only to the school community, but also through them to the whole community where the schools are located. So how we can really create a culture of prevention and mitigation and of resilience here. So this is our main goals. Some examples of activities that has been developed by GADRRRES members. So for instance, the World Bank through the GFDRR has launched not so long ago, less than a month ago, their global program for safer schools. So this is a global program that is related about the pillar one, so about the school infrastructure, but that is related more about the financial requirements that governments will need in order to secure that the schools are safe. As you know, the World Bank, their counterpart are ministers of finance, which is very important. So through this program, what they want is to try to understand what are the requirements that are necessary in terms of financing in order to support those countries in the diagnosis, analysis, and planning for securing safe learning facilities. Another example is a methodology that was also launched recently in the framework of the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, that is the UNESCO guidelines for assessing learning facilities in the context of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. So there are guidelines that are already online and open to everybody. These guidelines would try to do is about how to perform school assessments of the infrastructure that can be done by all the countries. So using the existing capacities of those countries, and that can provide information about where are the different weaknesses that that specific school has in terms of the site, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the environment of the school, in terms of the access to the schools, and in terms of the location where it is, and tries to provide after the assessment strategies about what will be suggested to do: retrofitting, relocation, remodeling, etc., with a specific budget allocation for each of the schools. So these are guidelines that are online. You can check them for it, and you can start implementing it if you would like to use them. Concerning Pillar 2, for instance, Save the Children, together with the different foundations like CAA, has promoted key message about school emergency drills. And this is very important because school drills play a pivotal role in both the gradual improvement of school disaster reduction and response preparedness. So school drills, we need to have recommendations in order to improve school drills and to try to understand that drills has to be tackled to different hazards. It's different a drill for tsunamis than a drill for earthquakes or a drill for hurricanes. So we need to have a specific message that let us know how we can really respond to a specific hazards and how we can develop those skills that are more not cognitive, like empathy, solidarity, and etc., in order to have a good impact of those drills. So this is another example on Pillar 2 about what we are doing. And on Pillar 3, for instance, UNICEF, together with UNESCO, have developed guidelines about how to embed disaster risk reduction in the formal curricula. So for doing these things, the first thing that they do is they did a mapping of 30 countries that has been already including DRR into the curricula, and they check what are the different elements and the different approaches that will allow to have an effective insertion of DRR into the curricula. And they found 4 different approaches, which you're going to see there. And based on that, they developed some guidelines for education planners and notably from curricular developers that they can select one of those approaches depending on their capacities that they have or on the way that they would like to develop those in the curricula in order to do it in a more effective way. So if you can see, those approaches go from a shallow way that are, a concurrent time, coordinated program delivery, to a more deep approach on which when you have an interdisciplinary, cross-curricular blending of DRR learning. So for instance, that you can really embed DRR in all of the topics like mathematics, like history, like natural science, social science, etc., etc. So this is some of the examples that we have. Another example has been produced by our colleagues of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, together with Save the Children, that is about providing public awareness and public education for the other through action-oriented key message for households and schools. So the idea is that we can have a consensus-based key message about how to react. That those messages could be actionable and universal practical, and that really can sustainable avoid the effects and impacts of disasters in a coherent way, that we are not giving different messages to our communities or our kids that can be more confusing, that can be solving ideas in the way how we prepare on that. So as you can see in the comprehensive school safety framework, and I'm going to go back to the slide of it, in the center of the comprehensive school safety framework, we have what we call multi-hazard risk assessment, education sector analysis, and child-centered assessment and planning. So these are key elements that are at the center of the comprehensive school safety framework. We cannot do that if we don't know how the education sector is now, so how the policies and plans has been implemented, if they exist or not, what are the capacities of each sector, and if we have been thinking this with a child-centered perspective, and also if we don't have a multi-hazard risk assessment. And this is why the Global Alliance has been working on what we call the Comprehensive Safe School Assessment Suite, that have different levels. So we have a first level that is what we call a self-assessment, that is more about community awareness. So we have developed RISRECT together with Save the Children has developed a mobile application that is more about raising awareness about the different pillars that we have explained today. The second is a self-assessment as well, that has been tested in Laos with Save the Children and in Fiji. And the idea is to have a quick survey on pillars 1, 2, and 3, but done by the same school, in order for them to understand better what are the gaps and where they need to focus their efforts in each of the pillars of the comprehensive school safety. The third is more a technical one, that this is what I just mentioned, the VISUS methodology, and that is targeting notably pillar 1, but not only, because as you can see, through pillar 1 you have elements that are related to pillar 2 and pillar 3, and that is more related about an inspection of the school and a visual inspection of the school to try to understand what are the weaknesses and how you can develop strategies to make schools learning facilities safe. And the fourth is what we call the detailed investigation and design. So this is real deep investigations that go in a long term and that go on all of the pillars. So deep investigations on the infrastructure, deep investigations on how we have been preparing the school disaster, the management of DRR at the school levels, and also a deep analysis, for instance, about tests and exams that can provide us elements about if we have an effective use of the curriculum for disaster risk reduction. So this C assessment suite, the idea is to provide tools that will support governments and communities to better understand what are the elements and the gaps that they found in order to provide a holistic approach for school safety. Another thing that we have been working a lot is on the policy and enable environment. And one of the issues that has been supporting this, for instance, is the Worldwide Initiative for Safe School. This Worldwide Initiative for Safe School, it's, let's call it like the political advocacy on which one we would like the governments commit themselves on working on all of the elements of the comprehensive school safety framework. Nowadays, This WIS has three main elements. The first one, as I had mentioned, is the global advocacy and policy support. The second is technical assistance. So for governments that decide to get on WIS, they can take the advantage to have the technical assistance of GADRRRES on that. And also is a mechanism to progress monitoring and reporting. So what we want to do is to try to understand if progress has been made on those governments that come in and how we can really measure that progress. So nowadays we have already 58 countries worldwide that has been uh, signed WIS, but we really want that this number goes on all the countries so that we can have a political commitment worldwide for school safety. And how we are doing that? So we are trying to use our regional coalitions, for instance, the Asia Pacific Coalition for School Safety, in order to raise awareness on governments that they need to become part of this. And we have already launched the Asian Safe School Initiative, the ASI, on which one most of you are very aware. We have launched already 2 years ago, the Caribbean Safe School Initiative. And we are working very hard on launching the Latin America without the Caribbean school safety initiative, hopefully next year, as well as the African school safety initiative next year. But there are many areas or many regions that still don't have a regional initiative. And for why is important about this regional initiative? Because normally at the regional level, you have cultural similarities, you have same kind of issues and problems that can be tackled more on a regional perspective than an international perspective. So this is why we believe that regional initiatives are very important, not only to bring the advocacy that is necessary for school safety, but also to share experience between neighborhood countries about how to tackle school safety issues. Concerning policy and enable environment, for instance, INI have provided minimum standards for education on preparedness, response, and recovery. But also the UNESCO IEP has provided guidelines for planning education in emergencies and reconstruction. We need to have the plan for education in emergencies, not at the moment of the emergency, but before. And we need to know how the Minister of Education and the different practitioners will have to interact in order to secure that education is taking place even in the emergency, so after the emergency has happened. So this is where we have been developed this kind of policy and enable environment. What GADRRRES has been done? So, for instance, in March 2019, all the partners elaborate a 2 years work plan. So it's a work plan that is composed of task teams that are classified per category, and each task team is led by an organization and includes a set of partners that will allow that organizations to work on those tasks. So we have tasks that has been provided to the steering committee, tasks that has been given to the Secretariat of GADRRRRES. So we have a Secretariat and two different working groups. The working groups that are divided on the three pillars of the comprehensive school safety framework and the policy on advocacy pillar that is trying to promote the WIS and is trying to promote all that is related to policy and planning. And we have cross-cutting issues on which one we have different tasks working on that. What are the cross-cutting issues? That is a very interesting question, Christoph. For instance, climate change. How we can, in a way, use the comprehensive school safety framework in order to tackle climate change nowadays. So, for instance, we are working on trying to see how climate change, but also conflict, can be seen from the perspective of the comprehensive school safety framework. So this is one of our cross-cutting issues. The comprehensive school safety assessment suite is another cross-cutting issue. So how we can go in the whole CSF framework in order to assess the capacities and gaps that we have on our on the specific community or at the regional or national level. So this is what the GADRRRES work plan is about. Then how you can get involved. So for instance, one of the first things is get involved on our community of practice Safe Children, Safe Schools, so that we launch in the framework of the last global platform for disaster risk reduction in Geneva this year. So we are more than happy to have you among us in order to share experience, share documents, share worries, share questions that you will have. This is a good platform which when we can start discussing together about how we can better try to tackle this issue of safe schools and how to promote the comprehensive school safety framework. I'm sure that Kate will mention this after I finish my presentation and will give you more details on this. But this is a way about how you can get involved. Another way is subscribe to the GADRRRES newsletter so you can get information about what we are doing worldwide, and also you can provide information from your side that will be disseminated for all of the people that are receiving this newsletter worldwide. We have many people that have subscribed for this newsletter worldwide, and that can understand how you have been tackling the issue of school safety and what are the different issues that they can adapt and adopt in order to do the same worldwide. So subscribe to the GADRRRES newsletter. A little bit of promo here. Also, how you can get involved. So for those organizations or for those people that are not part of one of the already members of GADRRRRES and that has a specific mandate in education and in disaster risk reduction, and that have a regional or an international scope, we are trying to promote that they become a member, that they come here and tell us what are the elements that they have been working on this and how their expertise can support GADRRRRES activities worldwide. Also, for specific activities. So if you have a specific activities that is related to school safety and you are searching for technical support, you can use, of course, the community of practice, but also you can contact GADRRRRES in order to see how we can support you technically in the implementation of that specific activities. As you saw, most of the members of GADRRRRES has representations worldwide, UNICEF, Save the Children, UNESCO, the World Bank, World Visions, Plan International. We are in most of the countries worldwide. So we can help you in order to implement actions and technically support you on those actions that you would like to implement on school safety. So contact us and we will support you. Key message about this webinar, and with this I will finish this presentation. So GADRRRRES represents a set of members that are engaged in moving the school safety agenda in the context of DRR forward. So we are here all together in order to secure that the school safety is at the top of the agenda of decision makers, of policy planners, and that is not something that is only tackling one issue like infrastructure or like curricula, but in a holistic way. We believe that working in network requires coordination, but enables to avoid duplication. And this is very good because since we developed GADRRRRES, has been very easy now to go not only to governments to tell them how different organizations can support the government on different aspects that those organizations has mandate and expertise, but also when we approach donors, it's very easy to try to make to understand the donor that these consortiums work together for a specific objective. That is something that before 2005 was not happening in a coordinate manner. So the same donor was having the same kind of proposal from different agencies that wanted to tackle the same issue. So now for donors it's more clear to see who has a mandate, who has the expertise, and how these institutions can get the support for other institutions on areas where they don't have that specific mandate. So that helps to better conversation and negotiation, as I said, but also a way to interact with the different practitioners on school safety. So as I say before, if your organization has a mandate on education and DRR and a regional international school, please apply to become a GADRRRES member. And another key message is through GADRRRES, we can support you technically on all of your actions, programs, and plans that you would like to develop at local, regional, and country level, or even regional and international level. So please let us know. We are here to support you. Please follow us. We have many ways to see how you can follow us. A part of the newsletter that I already mentioned, we have a website where you can download information, guidelines, publications, study cases, etc., etc. We have our email address. Please contact through them if you have a specific questions about support. Here, we have our Facebook page, so please follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and follow us on our YouTube channel, on which one this specific webinar and all of the webinar that has been developed in the framework of the Safe Children, Safe Schools community of practice are being uploaded. So with this, I will finish, and I will pass the floor now to my Kate, that will give you some more information about the community of practice, and then we will be open to all of the questions, and we will try to solve your questions as much as we can. And if not, we will contact you back in order to try to see those questions, how we can be solved. So thank you for your attention, and I will be very happy to answer your questions. So over to you, Kate.
Everyone, there will be a follow-up email after this webinar, and in that email we'll link to all the ways you can contact GADRRRES, but also how to sign up for the Safe Children, Safe Schools community of practice. Now we do have a couple of questions that have come through, so I might just pop them up on the screen, and Jair, did you want to answer them? Just one second. There we go. The first one from Sabine. As German Red Cross, we are working in Morocco together with the Moroccan Red Crescent on school safety. We wrote a case study. Can we publish this on the GADRRRES website to share our experience? Jair?
Yes, it's thank you, Sabine, for the question. Yes, it's very important. Please share the information with us. We will be very happy to upload that case study not only on our GADRRRES website, but also we will be happy to disseminate it to the newsletter. So please contact the GADRRRES Secretariat. You have the email in the last slide, so we're going to share this presentation. You can have the email. And through it, we can disseminate that study case to all the community worldwide. So please share it with us. Kate?
Children, Safe Schools community of practice as well.
Exactly.
Now, just one second. I'll just get the next question.
So there was one question about the cross-cutting issues. I guess that that was made by Christophe, and I explained that question during the presentation. I hope that was clear for you, Christophe. If not, let me know. Also, I see Dragon has made a question concerning that what is the process of application if one country wants to become member of GADRRRES or WIS. So normally, countries, they don't become members of GADRRRES, they became members of WIS, of the Worldwide Initiative on School Safety. GADRRRES is more about the technical people, as I mentioned, these organizations that are supporting governments, but WIS is about that political commitment that countries has on that. In order to do so, the government has to have different channels. The most recurrent channel is they send the application to UNDRR, so the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, or they send the applications through GADRRRES. So they can send the applications with a letter saying, I look at we are the country X, and we are very much interested in being part of the worldwide initiative for school safety. If that country belongs already to a region on which one we have a regional platform as the Asian Coalition for School Safety or the Caribbean, we will also put you in contact with that regional entity, and through then we will make sure that you will be part of the worldwide initiative. So the channel is contact UNDRR or contact the GADRRRES Secretariat, who immediately will contact WIS. WIS has been led by UNDRR, is one of the advocacy pillars of UNDRR, but the technical support is doing to GADRRRES. So we are working very close with them. They are members of GADRRRES, of course, but we are working very close in order to make that all of this policy advocacy comes together and that the technical support of that country that became member of WIS can be done. Okay, Kate, maybe we have another question. Let me see.
Yes, there's one from Jin. So I'll just pop that up.
Fantastic. Okay, hi, this is Jin from Save the Children China. Hi, Jin. Our team members tried several times and we cannot subscribe to the newsletter. Seems IT issues. I'm wondering, can we download the newsletter from the GADRRRES website? Can the newsletter be shared in a PDF format as well so that we can easily share them with interested partners? Now it is in a MailChimp format. Okay, this is something, it's a very good suggestion, Jean. It's something that for sure our colleague Lucille, who is our coordinator for GADRRRES, will take note. And I guess that there is not any problem for that. I guess I'm not very sure, but maybe the newsletter can be already downloadable from the GADRRRES website. If it's not the case, we will make sure that this is something that we will do. And about to share it in a PDF format is a very good idea. This is something that, in my understanding, we haven't done yet, but it's a very good idea. So like that, we can have, like a easy sharing or a easy file that we can share with everybody, not only by mail but also by other social medias like WhatsApp, etc., etc. So it's a good suggestion, Jean, and thank you for that.
And we have one last one from Melly. And I encourage people to continue to ask questions, and we can follow up on those questions in the follow-up email. So here's the last one from Melly up on the screen.
Okay, just to follow out on the previous question of Jean, Lucille now is telling me that the GADRRRES newsletters are online on the GADRRRES website, so you can download them in the GADRRRES website. And she has also shared the link in order to download. So it's in gadrres.net /news and events, so you can check that link and then you can access to the newsletter. And she said that she will work on the PDF version in order that we can disseminate it. Now, going back to the question of Meli. So, hi, I want to ask, this is Meli from AC in Asian. We have a multi-hazard education continuity research in Asian region, and we have some findings in our research about the capability of the teachers and the leveling of the ICT. Our recommendations are need to invest of the teacher capability to increase the education continuity, that's for sure, and need a consistent of enforcement on national policy on safe learning facilities. What do you think to improve on these things, since some countries already have the TOT? I imagine that is the training of trainers on school safety, but in the real condition, it is still need to be improved. Wow, this is a very interesting question. I guess it's divided on two parts. So about how one is more related to pillar 3, so that is concerning teacher capabilities to increase the education continuity. And I guess that this is part also of the education in emergencies aspect. So one of the issues on education in emergencies is the that when we are planning for education emergencies, we have to be as much as participatory as possible. And that means that we need to include the vision of teachers, but not only their vision, but also their worries. Uh, when we have emergencies, we have to realize that teachers are not only teachers, but they are also humans that can be affected by those specific emergencies. So we have to take care also about the teacher, not only on improving their capacities uh, for promoting safe school and education emergencies and the necessary curricula in the case of emergencies, but also to understand how teachers as a humans have issues that can be making that commitment and that involvement of teachers in an emergency could be more difficult. So how we gonna encourage them to come, how we gonna support them psychological and economically in the case that they have been affected by the emergency. So this is very important. What recommendations can we have? One of the issues that we are trying to do is to promote massive online open courses that can be used for those teachers in order to improve their capacities. What else we are doing? Providing materials, providing elements in order to be sure that teachers are in good understanding about how the hazards can affect the education. But also, and this is very important, we are trying to provide technical support to teachers. I'm saying this why? Because teachers nowadays, they have the most wonderful professions, but they are not very well recognized worldwide. If we are talking about Finland, yes, but if we are talking about other countries, teachers are not very well paid. Teachers have issues related health issues. So we are requesting these people that are central in societies to provide elements of the curricula like mathematics, social science, natural science, but at the same time, we are trying, or there are a movement to push them to be also specialists on climate change, specialists on disaster risk reduction, specialists on HIV, specialists on conflict resolution. And this is something that we cannot ask the teachers to do. We can tell them and give them elements for them to understand what we are talking about it, but they need to have the support from other technical and other people that can support on this because they have more the expertise on that. So for instance, this is an interesting role that, for instance, the Red Crosses are playing, or Save the Children, working with those communities and with those teachers in order to bring the capacities and the capabilities of the teacher in order to get the support technical for somebody else that can provide this kind of topics on that. So I'm not saying that teachers should not know about what it is, but what I say is like we should not overload what teachers are doing in their countries, but we should support them on that. So this is concerning the first one. Concerning the national policy on safe learning facilities, yeah, this is very important. And that needs to include many aspects. For instance, building codes that are specific targeting school facilities, long-term planning on where we're going to put our schools, where we're going to place them. Are we going to place the schools in the coastal areas when we are prone to tsunamis? No. So we need to have a long-term about site selection, about what are the specific hazards that we need to have there. And for that, we need national policy on those. There are some countries that has been implemented national policy on school safety that are related to school infrastructure, but there are many that are lacking on that. And this is why the program of GFDRR, the program of UNESCO, and the INEE standards are trying to provide the necessary elements, not only for assessment, but for planning that will include legislation in those countries in order to tackle safe learning facilities. And of course, when we are talking about policy, we are talking also about the institutional architecture that will make that really we can enforce those policies. Because sometimes we have wonderful building codes, we have wonderful legislation, we have wonderful policies, but we don't have at the institutional level, notably at the government level, the institutional architecture that allows that we can enforce those policies. So this is why it's very important when we are talking with ministers of education and we are talking about the education planning and policies, that those elements will be included on that policy. I hope that I was clear on these very long questions. If not, please let me know and I will come back to it.
We could have a whole conversation on this in the community of practice as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, we're interested in making webinars that meet your needs. So we'd love to hear from you on how you thought this webinar went. So I'm just going to pop up on the screen 2 questions. Just one moment. There we go. So up on the screen, you can see 2 questions. The first one was, this webinar will be useful for my work, if you could answer that one. And the second is, how satisfied are you with the webinar today? And if you have any more questions, I encourage you to continue to write them here and we will follow up on them, or feel free to note them down in the discussion in the Safe Children, Safe Schools community of practice and we can follow up there. Jair, thank you so much for making the time to present today. I'm sure I'm not alone in finding this webinar very interesting and also very useful. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of you who have joined today and made the time to join as well. We look forward to continuing the discussion with you on the community of practice, and please do look out for more GADRRRES and Safe Children, Safe Schools webinars coming up early next year. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Kate. Thank you to all of you.